The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
What makes a successful entrepreneur? If I tell you to picture a successful entrepreneur, really, what comes in your mind? Most people think of perhaps famous people like Zuckerberg or Musk or Jobs because they are the most memorable people. But they are not what makes up the bulk of successful entrepreneurs. I mean, not by a long shot for sure. With every business-based Hollywood film further distorting our image of entrepreneurship, many people have lost touch. So what is it taking to become a successful entrepreneur has never and will never change. And then surely the numbers don't lie. Durian ASEAN has invited quite a number of entrepreneurs and also startup company owners to share their experiences and of course ups and downs throughout their journeys. And we have compiled a few interviews that have really inspired our listeners out there. So today, this morning on Wednesday, we'd love to play some of our segments and also to be able to share and inspire again on Wednesday morning. The first interview is by Tim Fernandez at the Durian Heat, who is very strong, firm, and as well as who believes in being true to yourself.
You should help integrate the person, not disintegrate the person. Many a times if someone wants to work in a sales-driven company, but I'm not sales-driven, I'm not really moved by targets, then it's a different fit. But I can come into the company and learn that and somehow develop that, and that can be nurturing for me in a bigger picture, and it can be nurturing for the company as well.
And also make maybe the working environment less hostile in a way. You still get the work done, but not in a catfight sort of way.
It is very interesting because I see a lot of my colleagues and friends who tell me that, I'm a totally different person when it comes to work, and when I'm with you, I'm a different person. So then I did ask that person, then who are you really?
and because a human being is very multifaceted, you're very multi-dimensional, so you let certain people see certain parts of you at certain time.
True.
But sometimes that certain point of view still can relate to you. If I see Grace here, I somehow know that's Grace. It's not something that's projected onto me, And I think that's what I can't stand. And I wanted to build a company where the culture will nurture that part of a person, Not so much that you need to expose yourself, but so much that I'm actually meeting Grace, for example.
So but the Grace that you know.
Yeah, it's the Grace that I know. It's the Grace that it's the Grace. It's not something you picked up from the movies.
Right. Okay.
And you're projecting it on me. It's something that it's not a projection. It can be something that you don't apply at work, but it's still Grace.
And social innovation company that you have, Live and Inspire, is beyond just about trying to live an authentic life individually. It's also about trying to create something that is, either a product or a service or even a lifestyle that is authentic.
Yeah.
So why you have that goal in mind?
Because I lived the split life before. I found myself being a different person at work. I found myself being a different person at home. Found myself being different in an intimate relationship. And I couldn't stand it. This is not a way to live. I did a lot of research and found that the more unison you are, the less likely you will have the personality disorder, the split personality disorder. I finished listening to a talk. The doctor said that there are 200 mental illnesses.
That's a lot of disorders.
And there's so many symptoms, and I think some of us have some of those symptoms.
Right, for sure.
I saw myself in some of those symptoms, or I saw how it could get worse if I had lived the life I lived, many years ago. But I wanted to live the authentic life because I think that's your form of integrity. That's how you build your integrity. That's why I came up with a company called Live and Inspire, but not live and motivate, or I'm going to motivate myself. Sometimes motivation is not even real. It stems from a word called motive in action. That's how motivation is formed. And the word inspire comes from the Latin word inspirare, which means to be in spirit. So if you're living, you are definitely in spirit. So
You
lots
sound
of
like a
things
sage
happen.
now.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of thought that.
Of
that-
course,
that
I
we-
can
we
feel
put
that, you know.
behind that.
And also, I can also feel that, Tim, you went to a lot of struggles within yourself.
Yeah. But it's really interesting that you are making a comparison between what the difference between inspired or living authentically with the typical motivational talk or events or trainings that we always go. Even in today's world, right, there's an influx of companies setting up just to either giving people motivational talks or leadership training
Yep.
Yep.
or all this, making ourselves more motivated in life, I guess,
Like
or,
team building as well.
or more
yeah.
productive in the workplace. Do you think this is set to fail, or is actually counterproductive to even attend to all this?
I don't think it's set to fail, because sometimes if the training comes in at the right time and you're ready for it, it could initiate something. It could invoke something.
Right.
So I don't think it will fail. I think it's when you're receiving or when you're you encounter that training, you want to be able to be ready for that. So the embodiment happens almost instantaneously.
Right.
If I'm not ready for something and then I'm suddenly taking this in, it almost seems a violation to myself, because I'm not really ready to go and
So you
let's
ended
make
up
this
forcing
happen,
yourself.
Yeah. So I think the old saying is, when you're ready, the teacher appears. I really believe in that. So training works to some point, but I think it works when someone is really ready for it.
Right. And another question to that is, how do you sustain it? Meaning that you train this a group of people, so they got all inspired or motivated. But then, how long? How guarantee can you give the guarantee that person or group of people can sustain the motivation?
Yeah, and I think
and live with that.
Yeah, that's the biggest challenge for most corporates, because I send 30 people for training on leadership.
And they get inspired maybe for that day itself.
Like for a few
Yeah,
days only,
just-
right?
Yeah. So it's really a temporary
Exactly.
a temporary fix, So that's why I think more than training, if you build a culture of awareness, you build a culture that gets people to work in intense state when awareness is birthed, then I think it becomes more value added to the individual.
Right.
And then equipping the person with the skill or to manage people, or whatever the skill you want to them to learn.
You started out this company. You also have this larger aim to ensure that it actually goes back to community, benefits the community.
I think our larger aim is actually if it benefits the individual.
Yeah. Okay.
That's why our tagline is evoking transformation. But in the process of working with community, you grow. So the community is not really an end effect. It's the people within the community that is the end effect. So a lot of our work, if you realize, as much as we work with communities, building lots of community projects, and we work with corporates, we work to build community projects, it's really about the individual mending that. It's really about the individual receiving that part of the project. So it always goes down to the individual. And I think what I realize, if it only takes one individual to realize that, hey, I can do more, I can be more, I can contribute more. If that happens, then the community benefits. So we really go down to the smaller picture, not really the bigger picture for us.
Usually, when you talk about social innovation, you probably work in the CSR department, but you guys work in any department that wants your help, right?
Yeah, a lot of departments. We have HR calling us in, we have marketing calling us in, we have branding calling us in, because I think social innovation applies organizational wide, regardless of what segment you are in the organization. So they will call us in sometimes to brainstorm, they call us in sometimes to run trainings, they call us in sometimes to consult, sometimes they call us in to run the whole campaign. But the whole idea is to bring a social impact in the process of executing what they want to execute, right? And in that social impact, why we mean a social impact is not necessarily a mass community, but the individuals within the community is what we're just trying to impact. And we don't really want to change lives, we just want to evoke that transformation.
Right.
Because I don't think it's up to us to change people's lives.
Don't you want to measure the influence that you've given to the society? And if there is any, how do you measure all those influences?
We don't really measure influence. To begin with, we are actually against influence. Because, like I said earlier, you know, an influence can be a violating thing if the person is not ready for it. I think studies have shown, if you Google it on the internet, how advertisements bypass your conscious and hits your unconscious, and it happens so fast, so quick, so skillfully, without your permission, and it hits your subconscious, and suddenly you realize you're doing stuff that you're not really supposed to do.
Like buying the latest iPhone.
You know, so and sometimes these advertisements make you gullible, and you suddenly realize that's not really you. You know, so there's so much that hits your brain in terms of the subconscious that we don't even realize. So I think when we work with corporates, even that also, we become very clear with how we build things with them, and being conscious about what you're doing. So we know we can't measure. If you want to measure influence in a traditional aspect, like what's your reach, you know, how you've done that, I don't think you can do that with transformation.
I see.
Especially with an individual transformation, because you're always growing.
One transformation that probably we can measure is from one of your earliest project, which is project collaboration with Starbucks and Live and Inspire
series.
Maybe you can share more about that and how it actually gained influence, although you don't like the word influence, from different
Inspire.
I think
different corporate awareness from different corporate figures.
Yeah, and also if you would love to share one of your episodes with us, that would be great.
The Live and Inspire series is just a platform we created by accident.
By accident.
I like that.
We wanted to promote. We wanted to create an awareness about our conference, and somehow the series that we launched at a roadshow at Starbucks became more famous than our actual conference, and we decided, hey, you know, let's just build this into a product. So the Live and Inspire series, the essence of it is it's a bite-sized, unconferenced, playful session that is supposed to provoke you to think slightly more than what you think life is about. You know, if you think leadership is this is what it's about, somehow you will find someone standing on stage and saying, no, leadership is so much more than that.
Right.
You know, if you think your life is so limited in terms of knowledge and how you perceive things, then there's going to be a speaker up there that's going to say, no, there's something more to this than life. So the unconference coffee session is basically to provoke that. That's our intent. So there's not one way to be successful in life or to live a successful life.
Correct.
There are many ways to it.
There are many ways to be successful, and of course it comes with a lot of challenges for success, such as stress of running a business, of course, and where is your business model and the government legislation, or perhaps the lack of knowledge about raising a venture capital. How about market conditions? Good employees is another really important factor. Market products. How about building a sales team? How about skepticism about the technology? And lastly, large-scale management or even small ones. And also its infrastructure. How to manage all that? So those are the challenges that you cannot avoid to become an entrepreneur. We'll continue our second interview after this short break, so stay tuned.
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Well, let's go back to our topic today. I want to ask you a question. We all have a picture in our minds of entrepreneurs, right? In startup world, the picture usually involves a lot of pizza, Red Bull, and even a hoodie. What kind of picture do you have in your mind when you think of the word entrepreneurship or entrepreneur? And of course, we always carry, consciously or unconsciously, this picture of success. So if you're in software, chances are good you're dreaming of an Instagram level exit or infamy of Uber even. And most of us rarely dream in a miniature. And even when we accept the reality that those experiences are few and far between, they're still in the front of our minds. The truth about this entrepreneurship is a lot more well-rounded and complex than that. So here are some facts perhaps, or even surprising truths about entrepreneurships as well as startups. So before we move on to our next interview, let's just ask yourself, who are you? According to Kaufman, the number of women entrepreneurs, they grew in 2013, and it's very recent. 95% of entrepreneurs have a bachelor degree or higher, despite the recent PR for dropping out college to start up. And they earn also about 67% ranked their college performances in the top 30 of their undergraduate classes. 70% of founders are married when they start up, and 60% have at least one child. So it really shows, doesn't matter where you're from or what you do and what kind of position you're at. And the next question that you need to ask yourself before you really get yourself into entrepreneur world is, where are you? So ask yourself, where am I? Do not be afraid of asking questions to yourself. It's already a good sign if you have already started it. So just go ahead. Don't be afraid, but make sure you do know what you're selling, or you do know what kind of ideas that you've been holding to. So our next interview is with the CEO of Magic in Malaysia. Her name is Cheryl Yeoh. She is very an inspiring person and has a strong personality.
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
It's important to have an agency that focuses on teaching entrepreneurs in Malaysia how to start up, like the skills that are required in starting a company that isn't like a typical business where you open a restaurant and you have to take out a loan and you have to get property and you have to, those kinds of businesses are still valid, but they're different, right? So rather than the brick and mortar business, Magic is really focusing on startups that can leverage technology to scale very quickly. So you can be worth zero in year one or year zero, and in year two, like Grab Taxi, they can be worth $1 billion, right?
So, what is exactly the purpose and the mission, and also what is the focus? Is it focus only on the technology, or is it Magic also focus on other industries?
So I think it's a misnomer to say that Magic is only focusing on tech companies. Actually, we are focusing on every industry, but we need to educate all industries to innovate and leverage technology to innovate, right? To grow and scale. So, for example, I consider my taxi to be in the transportation industry, but they have leveraged technology to innovate on the business model. So, for example, taxis in the past, you would have to call a taxi center to call for a cab, right?
Yeah.
Or you just do a traditional way, you hail the cab and you pay them cash. But with the mobile technology, with using mobile, now the call centers are no longer needed. So they're disrupting the whole taxi call center industry, and now it's safer to call a cab because you can track your driver, you can track where you're going, you know exactly what you need to pay. So I would consider that an innovation on top of the transportation industry. Hence, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. You could be in agriculture, you could be leveraging IoT technology to figure out when is it dry, when to automate the watering of plants and all that. You could be in the F&B industry and you're creating a system to help people order food ahead of time. You could be in the retail industry selling clothing but having an e-commerce site where, say for example, Muslim wear. You can enter the Muslim market in the Middle East by having a website that lists all the Muslim fashion and whatnot, which I think Fashion Ballet is doing, for example. And you can grow your company way quicker than you can with a traditional store. So this notion of growing a business using technology is what Magic wants to focus on. So our mission is really to increase the number of scalable, high-growth companies that can expand beyond Malaysia very quickly and capitalize on the ASEAN market.
Entrepreneurs, especially young entrepreneurs. So let's go on to the question where how can young Malaysian entrepreneurs go regional in the advent of AEC, ASEAN Economic Community?
People are looking at ways to think about a regional business. They should definitely apply to the MAP program. It's a 4-month accelerator program. It's all about building the regional connections.
A platform for all those entrepreneurs from all over the region to come together to share and also to listen to the mentor at the same time to look into the investments, is it?
To get investments into their companies, but also to focus on their products. So we will be helping them make sure that the product gets traction, that they get more users or more revenue, and we have teachers coming in to teach them how to grow their businesses. I think a lot of Malaysian entrepreneurs, they think very locally. So when they start a company or a business, they think, oh, I just want to tackle the Malaysian market. But Malaysia only has 30 million people. Yeah. So eventually, to build a VC fundable business, a high growth company, they need to take advantage of the 620 million people in ASEAN. So if they need to eventually expand their business to Indonesia or Thailand or Vietnam, they need to know someone local because, as you know, we all speak different languages, different cultures, different ways of doing things. So this program actually helps build that regional connection so that when someone is finally ready to expand to Indonesia, perhaps they have met someone at the MAP program that eventually can connect them to the local Indonesian ecosystem. So as an entrepreneur, we believe a lot in human connections and human capital and the power of knowing the right people. So it is really important to foster that kind of thinking and community.
Well, there should be a lot more challenges that has been faced by youth who want to venture into entrepreneurship, and would you like to share on that?
Yeah, so actually I want to mention social entrepreneurship as something that is really exciting because I think a lot of young people who are interested in starting a company, they don't want to just start a company. They want to start a company with a mission that they're passionate about, right? And so social entrepreneurship has managed to capture a lot of young people's attention because social entrepreneurship is where the social mission or the environmental mission is as high, if not higher, than the profit mission, right? So I think a lot of people care about their communities and they want to make a difference in the world. So, but I think traditionally the way social entrepreneurship has been in Malaysia and also the rest of the world has been through charities or non-profit organizations where you would depend on donations, right? Yeah. Or it could be a big corporate company that does CSR activities. However, with social entrepreneurship, we want to change the mentality and mindset of the people that they don't need to depend on grants and donations, but they can and should build a sustainable business model where they can make an impact but also be sustainable and make money at the same time.
So when it comes to sustainability, the funding is very important starting a business, right? Do you have any tips or advice that you can give out to young entrepreneurs?
Traditionally, people think that you need money to start a company because you are building like a store, right? You need a lot of capital. But these days, that's why with technology, if you have a social media page on Facebook or if you have a website, and there's so many free templates out there that you can use to quickly create a WordPress page with an e-commerce engine or something like that, so that people can start up and put their mission and what they want to do online very quickly. So the cost of starting up is actually not that expensive, and you can even outsource to India, or there's cheaper labor elsewhere that you can put up. So my advice is to start thinking, how can you build a business and test it really quickly using technology or leveraging technology, and then once you have validation on your business model that you're building something that people want to use, or you're solving your problem that is big enough, then you should raise money. So you shouldn't raise money with just an idea.
Right.
I think maybe like 10 years ago people did that, but now all the investors who will invest in your company will want to see a product first. They want to see that you've done your market research, you understand your customers, and your customers will pay for your product, or in some ways or another. You need to figure out a business model first.
Well, there are still a lot of them thinking that I want to do this, I have this right product, but then they wouldn't know what's the right product, or if it could be very just the ambition-based sort of business. How do they actually differentiate that this is the right product, that they can target the right audience?
The key is really just to go out and talk to customers. So a lot of mistakes that entrepreneurs make is that they build the product at home and it's all in their mind. They think that this product is great and solving a problem, but if they don't talk to the customers who will eventually use their product, they're not learning. They might be building the totally wrong product, and they're making a lot of assumptions about people's behaviors. So I would say go out and really test your assumptions. Test why would people want to sign up and use your product versus what is the current alternative? What are they doing right now that you are improving on, where the switching costs would be low enough that they would switch to use your product. Talk to customers more and really understand their problem and how the product they're creating is solving that problem. Perception of failure. People are afraid to start something new because they're afraid of failing. But, I think that notion is changing, though, because I think in the West, like, for example, in the US, failure is a badge of honor. Like, a lot of entrepreneurs understand that it maybe takes like 5 failures to have one success, but as long as you learn from your failure, it's okay. So I think we need to encourage young aspiring entrepreneurs that failure is okay. You have to try. As long as you're trying and you're learning from it, eventually you will learn enough that you will succeed.
What do you think are the top skills that the young entrepreneurs need in order to make it in whatever it is that is their ventures?
The most important skill, I think, is to be resourceful. So if someone tells you, no, you can't do it this way, you don't just stop there. You will figure out 10 other ways to do it. So that is resourcefulness, and that is one of the most important indicators of a successful entrepreneur. I think also they have to have very strong willpower and passion. So they need to be willing to work hard, but also be very disciplined and focused. A lot of entrepreneurs tend to do too many things, and they become very unfocused because they have so many roles, and they don't know what to focus on. So I think it's really important to determine what is the key metric you need to focus on in your business. Is it driving up users? Is it increasing revenue? Is it making a sale? Pick just one metric and improve that 10 to 20% week over week. And if your numbers are not going up, then you're not doing something right.
Right.
Stay tuned for the next segment of the Durian Heat. We have another session with an entrepreneur, and also this time about crisis management from Livescape Asia.
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
At Livescape Asia, They believe in a 360-degree approach to conceiving, marketing, and executing events. And also, apart from that, they ensure that they always put on a show that people will not only remember but also talk about, such as, like you were mentioning, Future Music Festival, Asia, as well as Rockaway. And they have, I think they're not only prominent in Malaysia, they pretty much, they are a regional organization that focuses all over Asia. And let's talk about maybe some of the notable performances in the past, starting with FMFA, of course. That was cooked up quite a storm when a few people died, or it seemed like they were overdosed and they were rushed to the hospital, and some of them died. And of course the news came out saying that it was because they used the drugs, but then the post-mortem revealed later that it was more because of the heat wave,
the weather,
dehydration, being unable to breathe because it was so packed, and that caused quite a stir as well. And but there's nothing that Livescape could do because the event was already cancelled at that point. And FMFA is actually one of the biggest music festival that we have in Asia, and for them not being able to return to Malaysia, and I think after that even Singapore rejected them and didn't want to host next FMFA. So we also want to know what's the future for this.
Livescape has held a lot of events, and those are very significant events that we're talking about here. But we can't also avoid to share and also hear how did you guys managed all this crisis so far. So let's start with perhaps FMFA.
So how did the whole thing start when you hear about the news of the people that were rushed to the hospital and all?
Right.
What was the first line of reaction? How things worked?
I think everything happened pretty quick. Obviously, it's really unfortunate what has happened, but for me, it was very vivid. I remember I think the news broke at about 2 p.m. on a Saturday or something like that. I remember getting a text from a journalist from the Star at 12:30 p.m. saying, "Hey Jason, have you heard the news?" And I went, "What news?" And he said, "The cops just shut down your festival." So I said, "Oh no, I've not heard I've not heard anything about that." He said, then he replied and he said, "The cops apparently said they've already sent you guys a letter, but we've not received any any letter or any information about that." And then from that moment on, it was just sort of in a way a scramble, but it was but surprisingly it was a very organized scramble, if that even makes sense.
Organized scramble, that's interesting way of putting it.
Yeah, so I think the good thing is because we've done this for so many years, we've sort of planned for almost any eventuality. So
you had the backup sort of the ideas and the plans.
Yeah, so there was a crisis management plan in place.
Right.
So if something big was to happen, there was even code words. There was code black, code red, code green, and stuff like that. Yeah, so it was so it was a huge thing, like an event being forced to cancel. The first thing that needs to happen was everyone was to get the key people was to gather in a emergency operations center and have an emergency meeting to determine our next course of action. And that was what happened almost immediately the moment I got that text, within the next 10 or 15 minutes. By then I think the police were already moving in to secure all the perimeters around the festival site. So once it became clear that the show couldn't go on, the first thing we did was we issued a sort of a holding statement, which basically just confirmed that we've had to cancel the festival, and to reassure fans that we still don't know what's happening. I think the key thing when it comes to crisis management that a lot of brands, a lot of people take for granted is transparency and honesty.
Of course.
Yeah, a lot of people tend to sort of use a lot of big jargon words or try to avoid the issue rather than address the issue. And I think the one thing that we did quite well with our first statement was we addressed the issue transparently and honestly. We sort of reassured the fans that everything was going to be okay, and we provided a solution, which was sort of like the refunds and stuff. So that was essentially what we did with the first statement. I think whatever you say, the first statement that you put out in a moment of crisis is the one that's going to get you the most attention. So you've got to sort of get that right. Yeah.
So I'm curious to know what happened, because I think at that point of time when it got cancelled, Macklemore was supposed to come on stage,
Right,
and that was the highlight of the whole event.
Yuna was doing a sound check.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So how did you have to handle the
Artist side, yes.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge for us in 2014 when we had the crisis was the lack of information.
Oh.
So meaning we were getting information from third party and not directly from the source itself. So when, for example, when I said just now, like the event got cancelled, we didn't hear from the police directly.
Right.
We heard it from a journalist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we didn't know sort of whether it was credible until we saw the FRUs in the front of the of the festival. Then we knew it was credible. Yeah. But I think once that happened, then the whole of Livescape, everyone in Livescape, just pulled together, which was amazing to see. So the artist teams, without even having to ask them to do it, they started briefing all the artists. There were international acts that were on the way. They turned the artists back around, sent people over to the hotels to brief the artists. Same with the local acts as well. Obviously, we delayed for about an hour and a half because there was the discussion going on and to sort of find out how credible this was. And then obviously from our end, we started prepping for the statements. And releasing it to the public almost immediately. So what we did was we recorded a voiceover to be blasted at the front entrance because there was already a crowd building up. And the last thing we want was, because there was a line of Federal Reserve units at the front of us, and the last thing we want was someone to start throwing bottles or any objects at them, and that would have created a riot situation. We should have made the festival, made the crisis even worse. Yeah, so it's all about sort of, I think it all goes back to reassuring the fans, the artists, or every stakeholder that everything was going to be okay. That is not the end of the world in a way, I guess.
For sure. I mean, but now it makes sense that how it was organized scrambles after all.
Did you have to refund any of the artists because they didn't perform, or was it just...
Fans, yes, but artists, no. The artists will not refund you. Because how this industry works is, when you book an artist, once they've signed a contract, you've got to pay them 50% up front.
Yeah.
Before they arrive into the country, you pay them the balance 50%.
Okay.
So by the time they're already in the country, regardless whether the show goes on or not, they've already gotten their full payment.
Okay.
Yeah, they've already.
So there was nothing
there's nothing that could be done because they've met their part of their agreement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If the show didn't happen, it's nothing to do with them. Yeah. So for future, we lost a couple of million on artist fees.
Of course, yeah. And off-air, you mentioned that when you start an event company, you need to expect to lose a lot of money at the first few stages. Could you elaborate on that?
I think if you are looking to come into events, or if you're looking to build like a music festival, specifically a music festival, you can't come in with a idea of doing it for 1 year and see how it goes. You've got to come in with a sort of like a 3 or 5 year plan. Because, for example, when we did Is the Show of Future Music Festival, we knew for the first year we would lose money. And you're not talking about tens of thousands, you're talking potentially in the millions for the first year. But in the second year, it's when you aim to break even. First year, you will struggle a bit because it's a new brand. And I think the Asian market, or specifically the Southeast Asian market, are quite skeptical when it comes to new things. So second year, it's a bit easier because the festival has happened and your brand has grown significantly bigger. So you aim to break even in the second year, and in the third year you try to make some money to cover your losses for the first year. So essentially you only start making money on your fourth year onward.
All right. Yeah. That's like a step by step, and when it comes to finance management. But I will say that is also part of the crisis within the company, when the company does not have any capital, to start with, or along the way it loses a lot of money. Within the team, how did you able to bring all this team together, as in when the company doesn't have money, perhaps the one person may not have faith in the company, how this company can go on without any money?
I think that's the amazing thing about Livescape. I don't think there's ever a single person in Livescape who ever doubted that we were doing doing the right thing. and that I think goes back to your earlier question, which
Right.
which is passion.
Yes.
Where my earlier answer where I said the difference between Livescape, not the difference, sorry, but what makes Livescape special is everyone there is passionate about the same goal, which is to sort of change the music scene in Malaysia, around Southeast Asia. And I think so. I don't think there was any one person that is sort of skeptical
Right.
about the goal or the vision. Yeah.
We talked about the big scale of FMFA crisis management here, but let's break down into smaller ones. For example, I'll give you a scenario where you booked the artist already, but then let's say along the way there was something wrong with the flight, and then the artist happened to be delayed and to perform at certain time. How do you manage that sort of situation?
I think.
And the fans are already there.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I think at that moment in time, it still goes back to the three key elements of managing a crisis, like I said earlier. One is you sort of let the fans know in a very transparent, honest way about what's happening. Keep them
Okay.
updated, basically, and then you reassure fans that everything is going to be alright. And at the end of the day, you provide a solution to the problem. In this instance, it will be a refund.
Right.
Yeah. And I think if you do that, it will be okay. People will be angry naturally, right there and then itself. You will get a lot of people who are angry, but I think in the next 24 hours, once they've gone back and they've had time to think about it, most of them will forgive. As long as you've been transparent and you've been honest with them. I think that's one very key thing that I don't think a lot of brands, a lot of companies actually do.
Do you throw in a bonus as well, like you agreed or whatever?
No,
in
but
case
what
of a
we'll
crisis.
normally do is for our next event, we'll probably give them a ridiculously cheap rate for
Oh, right.
for entry into that.
So that
event.
is sort of the compensation that
Correct,
they can
yeah.
get. All right.
And how do you make up when you were saying that, the first year you have to expect to lose money, but then how do you make up for that in the second year? Do you have additional events on the side?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways around it. How we work is, Livescape as a company, we've got different revenue streams.
Okay.
So we don't just rely on the concert promotion bit.
Right.
Like I said earlier, we've also got an events management and activation arm, and that sort of brings in quite a bit of healthy profits for us as well, because that's clean profit, because you just organize an event, there's no risk on our end.
Correct.
People pay you a fee for it.
Right.
So the different revenue streams sort of helps offset some of the cost. Secondly is when we organize a big music festival, for example, unlike markets in Australia, US, or even Europe, where they can make money simply by selling out a festival because of the currency exchange, because of their foreign currencies. We can't in Malaysia. In Europe or Australia, for example, a one-day pass to a music festival will cost 148 to 168 euros or Aussie dollars.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but for us, it will cost 148 ringgit.
Yeah.
But when you pay the artist to come down, you are paying US dollars.
Oh, so that's a lot of difference.
Correct. So for us, we for all the countries actually in Southeast Asia, bar Singapore, we are actually even before our festival starts, you are already sort of forking out a lot of money just on artist fees alone. So how we try to sort of offset that is because we've got a formula where it's 60% of the revenue must come in from sponsorships and 40% is on tickets. Yeah, so which is why in Southeast Asia, if you want to run a music festival, it's very dependent on a sponsor. Yeah, otherwise, the show can't happen.
The second statement that was released is especially by the autopsy team when they said that, it was not actually the drug abuse, it was actually just heat wave and dehydration and all that. So how did you guys follow up from there? Did it change people's perception? Was things any better for you after that?
To us, it was quite a surprise. It was when we heard the news. It was shocking because obviously, for over a year and a half, we were sort of led to believe that
Of course.
drugs played a major role in the deaths. So it was very surprising. I think how we addressed it was we issued a statement to basically say just that. Again, it goes back to being transparent and honest, which is. We are shocked by the news.
Okay.
It's the first time that we've heard about it, and
But I think there was also, because I read the statement and it said that during the whole autopsy, there was actually no representative from Livescape over there. Was it just being done by the police and the doctors?
No, basically what happened was since the day that people sadly passed, we've been hounding the cops or the police for the official autopsy report.
Right.
But we've been given the runaround. So they've asked us to get it from the hospitals. We go to the hospitals say get it from the police. It's an investigation. We go back to the police. Police say, oh, it's under investigation. We can't release it to you. So till this very day, we've not seen the
you've not seen any
autopsy report. So everything that we've heard or all the information that we've gotten is directly from the media.
Oh.
Yeah. In fact, the media knows more than us.
That's very strange that how you didn't get the direct contact from them, but
Correct.
instead you got it from media side.
Correct.
Yeah.
So again, we can only address or issue a statement based on what we know.
Right.
Yeah. So from what we know is the Star ran a story based off an interview with a pathologist who has come out to say that the police got it wrong, that drugs didn't play a major role in the deaths. So that's all we could say, because that's all we know. What we've been told is the police is calling for a public inquiry into the matter to investigate what really happened, but we've not heard anything about it ever since. But we would encourage the public inquiry to happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the story with FMFA, but you did come up with something more interesting to actually sort of counter or to replace the whole Future Music Festival Asia. So maybe you can tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think when FMFA when FMFA 2014 got cancelled on the third day, when FMFA 2014 got cancelled on the third day, it was very depressing and it was very demoralizing.
Of course.
You would see huge men crying, huge men in Livescape crying, men that you would never. When you look at him, you will never think that he will cry.
Oh no!
Yeah, so it was very demoralizing. It was very depressing. And when we sort of eventually got back to work, once the crisis has sort of subdued after about 2 or 3 weeks, I think Iqbal played a very major role in sort of getting us all back onto our feet. And he called everyone into a meeting, and he just basically said, you know what, FMFA is done. It's done and dusted. Let's move on. What can we do? What can we do to replace FMFA? And we had a brainstorm session there and then itself. And one of our most junior staff came up with the idea of holding It's the Ship. Yeah, so It's the Ship in a way was born out of FMFA. That's why I think there's always some good in some. There's always a good that will come out of a negative. We've always believed in that. Even when FMFA got rejected in Singapore, right now, actually, if you look at it, maybe it was a blessing in disguise, because what it has allowed us to do is it's allowed us to rework on a new festival, which we are looking at replacing FFA in March next year. And so far, the concept that we've come up with is something that's quite cool. Yeah, it's quite cool, and it appeals to a very mass crowd.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
so we're looking forward to hearing more from your Livescape soon. Yeah,
Right.
and throughout the interviews from the first until now, you've never failed to mention passion and passion and passion. So let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurship when it comes to Livescape. We started with the very passionate student who wanted to study event management. Until now, their Livescape have grown so far. I mean, so much, and established so much significantly in Malaysia as well as the Southeast Asia. What is the most important elements that youngsters need to have to become a good entrepreneurs?
I think one obvious one is passion.
Of course.
But right next to it, I think very importantly is vision. Yeah, you must have a very clear vision as a leader. You must have a very clear vision for your business, where you want to be in 5 years' time, or even 10 years' time. And you must find a way to articulate your vision clearly to the rest of your team. I think that's very important. I think if you see how Livescape has done it, how Iqbal, our other director Rahul, has done it, is they are dreamers. First and foremost, they are dreamers. They don't take no for an answer. People will tell them that, this can't be done, that can't be done. When we wanted to do future the first year, the amount of people that told us it can't happen in Malaysia was ridiculous. But look, we made it happen for 3 years. You get what I mean? So they are first and foremost dreamers, and they are visionaries. Essentially, through that vision and that dream, they found a way to articulate it to the rest of us. We believed in that vision, and we believed in that dreamers. And I think all these three, together with passion, when you have that, you've got quite a formidable sort of formula to success. Another important thing to sort of have, or an important element to sort of have, and you will see that in the events that we do at Livescape, is we don't do things that other people have done.
Right.
In Malaysia or in the region. The one thing that we always ask ourselves when we come up with a concept is, are we pioneering something? Yeah, and I think that's what sets us apart.
Right.
Yeah, everything that we've done has always been with the goal of pioneering something new. Is the Ship was the first music festival on a cruise in Asia. Future Music Festival was Southeast Asia's largest music festival. We've got a show that we are bringing down within the next 2 months, which is the first time the artist is performing in Malaysia as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's
Another platform that you're opening
correct.
up.
Yeah, so I think essentially what you need is passion, vision, and a dream, and then look at pioneering something.
It's very important to have certain elements to become an entrepreneur. And Durian ASEAN, we are very thankful to have all those interviewers coming over to share their experiences, as well as to give some very insightful advice on entrepreneurship. So we're gonna be holding a lot more interviews on entrepreneur as well as startups, and not only in Malaysia but throughout Southeast Asia. Thank you for listening to us, the Durian Heat. We'll be continuing our session tomorrow, so stay tuned for the next segment as well. But look for us on our website, DurianASEAN.com, as well as our social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And this is Grace from Durian ASEAN. You're listening to Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing.